gentlemen. Episode 11, Portal Control. No, Portal Patrol. It's your boy Icon with a DC TV review for you. And before we get started, hit the like button, share, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because we're about 9 subscriptions away from hitting the 500 mark, and I thank and love everyone who helped contribute to get me there this far. Now, on to a different topic. I've been seeing all over the internet that they're announcing that the fourth and up-and-coming season of Superman and Lois is going to be the final season. And the internet is in an uproar, and everybody's upset, and they're just like, oh my god, like, why is it ending? I thought that was already news and known to the planet. Like, the whole thing about Superman and Lois ending in season 4, like, I knew that already. Like, I thought that was obvious because the reports came out during season 3 that they thought they were going to get canceled at the end of season 3. And literally all the actors, except for the Kent family actors, all the actors basically took other acting jobs in other different places because they said, oh, in the 4th season of Superman and Lois, they said that 7 people aren't returning. So I thought it was obvious that the 4th season was going to be the final season, but apparently this is news to other people. But like I said, we're going to review that too because, after Aquaman, Kingdom of Atlantis, the 4th and final season of Superman and Lois will end the Berlanti Zack Snyder current DC universe, of television and movies that we all grow to love. So we're definitely going to be here for that. And I also found out that the next episode of Doom Patrol is the final episode of Doom Patrol. So we're going to get the series finale of Doom Patrol next week, which is very sad, but we will review that as well. So now for this particular episode of Portal Patrol. The episode starts because in the last episode, everybody except Rita, because Rita dying. So the rest of the gang, they got thrown into the abyss by Immortus, and they were floating around through space and time. While they were in space and time, Vic used his new upgrades to show everybody that, he made like a protective, like force field bubble for them. And then Keeg, for some reason, he was able to merge with Victor and he was able to talk to his operating system. And they discovered that there is longevity that exists throughout the time stream. There are 3 different parts in the time stream where longevity exists. So the gang decides that they're going to jump into these portals and try to get their hands on this longevity. So now when they go into, Vic stayed behind because his whole thing was he was going to work on trying to get them back, to the real world, quote unquote. So everybody goes into pairs. Jane and Larry ended up going together in one particular pod, which is rare because we don't really see Jane and Larry, interact that much. Cliff went into his own portal, and then Madame Rouge went into her whole portal. Madame Rouge, when she went into her portal, she ended up in the ant farm, I think back in like the 50s or the 60s, back when she had betrayed Rita and all of her friends, and she was stamping everybody into weapons that, for people that they come across with. But so she knew that. But she went into Niles' scientific laboratory because she knew he was doing the Immortus experiment. And then she goes in, she knocks him. Niles Coulter's back too, by the way. Like, it's nice to see the actor back because he was all over this episode. So to get Niles back, before the series finale, I thought was very dope. So Madame Rouge, she knocks Niles Coulter out, and then she's looking to steal whatever longevity experiments he has going on. But then at that moment, the Madame Rouge from that time, she came into the office. And then she was like, oh, Mr. Coulter, she was like, I respect your work. And, she's like, I would love to be a part of what you're doing. But then because Madame Rouge is a shift shifter, our Madame Rouge, she turned herself into Niles Coulter, and then he told, that current Madame Rouge, he was just like, oh, I've been following you, Mr. Mill, and your disgusting methods make me want to puke, and you don't have the stomach for the Bureau. And then, but when he said the Bureau, he didn't say it like normal, he said it with, an Irish accent, and then that made, that made Madame Rouge kind of be like, that was weird. After she basically told herself off, Madame Rouge ended up leaving. Our Madame Rouge basically turned herself into a mouse, and she tried to run out of the room so nobody could see her. But the 50s Madame Rouge saw her because she said she's a shapeshifter and she can recognize a shapeshifter when she sees one. So the two of them got into a conversation, and she was like, oh, I'm you from the future. And then she was just like, oh, but I'm not you yet. And then she told her, she was just like, I hate what we become in the future. She was like, we betray our friends and, we do nefarious things and everything. And then she's like, I hate the person that you used to be. And then she tried to tell, she was like, no, she was like, I'm a good person. I'm doing good things. And then Madame Rouge was like, she's like, no, you're a monster and I hate you. And then she started beating herself up. And it's actually funny when you see someone kicking their own ass. And while she was kicking her own ass, she was stamping her younger self. She was like, you're the weapon. And then after that, that's how her whole version of the story ended. Cliff ended up in a time period where Niles first got his hands on the longevity. Him and the bootleg Constantine, both Niles and bootleg Constantine, they were both there. And then when Cliff rolled up on him, Cliff basically cursed dude out. He was like, look, you motherfucker. He said, you create me 2 decades from now. You ruin my life. You ruin the lives of a whole bunch of people. And you're a piece of shit. I hate your guts. but the only way that you can make amends for it, he said, give me a piece of that longevity that you just stole so I can use it to save me and, and my other friends. And then that's when Niles was like, oh, he's like, I would never do such a thing. And then he was like, bullshit, because you're trying to live long enough to outlive your daughter. He's like, I know all about it, you piece of shit. And then they started arguing. And then while they were arguing, the guys that Niles had stole the longevity necklace from, they showed up. And then that's when Cliff, he fought them off. And then him and Niles together, they actually fought them off. But then during the fight, one of them was about to shoot Niles, and then Cliff grabbed him and tried to throw him out of the way of the blast. And instead, he threw him into the bar and he cracked his spine, which made me laugh because I was like, I guess that's how Niles ends up in the wheelchair, which, like, if you find out that Niles ends up in the wheelchair because of Cliff, like, that would be hilarious. And then while Niles was on the floor, like, dying, Cliff took the longevity necklace off his neck. And then that's when Bootleg Constantine, he's like, oh, mate, he was like, you gotta be one soiled bastard to take a man's longevity while he's dying. And then Cliff got upset. He was just like, yo, why the fuck do I always have to be the good guy? He said, everybody else gets to parade around doing whatever the fuck they want. He said, but when it comes to the moral judgment, he's like, I got to be the moral person. So then he put the necklace back around Niles, and then he was just like, you owe me, motherfucker. And then he got upset. Larry and Jane back at Doom Manor in 65. When Larry went outside, Keeg actually went outside, and then he found the younger version of the original Negative Spirit. So Keeg was there, the Negative Spirit was there, like Larry was there. Larry was talking to the Negative Spirit, and then the Negative Spirit went and got the younger Larry and brought the younger Larry, and he was speaking to our Larry through younger Larry. And then they were just having a back and forth conversation. Like Larry was just like, he was upset because he was like, you left me. He's like, how could you do that? You left me with Keeg. I'm trying to find a home for Keeg. Maybe I can leave him with you because I lost my longevity and I'm dying. And then the Negative Spirit was like, no. He was like, this version of Larry can't handle two spirits. And he was just like, then he told him, he said that the visions that Keeg saw, he was like, you're not going to burn up into the sun. He was like, you're going to create new life, and then new life will be created. So I don't know what that means, but I guess we'll find out in the series finale, because something about to happen to Larry, and I guess it's going to be astronomically glorious, where him and Keeg are going to turn into like a new sun or something like that. It was very weird, but the Negative Spirit did tell him before Larry went back, to the Vic portal. He did tell him, he was like, yo, you got to control your fear, because he was like, your fear rubs off on Keeg, which is why Keeg probably freaked out when the whole future thing happened, and he was just like, oh, I'm going to kill you and everything. And then Larry was like, why would you say that? And that's how his story ended. Jane was the most interesting one, because Jane bumped into Niles Coulter in the manor. And when she bumped into Niles, she basically was like, yo, she's like, I know all about the longevity. I know all about the experiments. She's like, we know everything. And in the future, you're not there. We take care of your daughter for you. But she was just like, I want your longevity because I'm dying and I need it back. And then he was like, oh, that's the one thing I can't give you, Jane. And then he was like, but maybe I can afford you some counseling. So then Jane and Niles had a whole conversation about how Jane's, like losing her mind, and like she can't tap into the other personas, and like she doesn't know what to do. And then that's when Niles was just like, oh, he was like, but what's your purpose? And then she was like, I don't know. She's like, I got this stupid puzzle and I can't put the puzzle together. And then he was just like, but what do you want most of all? And then she wants peace. At the end of the day, Kay is basically one person who back in the 40s, I think it was the 40s or whatever, like back in the 40s, 50s or whatever, she created these different personalities to protect her from that trauma. But the thing is, with Jane specifically, Jane always felt that her job was to protect Kay. She was supposed to protect Kay's feelings, because what happened to Kay, was traumatizing to Kay, and it's her job, along with the other 63 personas, to protect Kay. But what it turned out being, because the personas showed up, Kay showed up, they were all in the room with Jane, and they were just like, come on, Jane, like, say the words, say the words. The fact of the matter is that what happened to Kay didn't just happen to Kay, and the personas were outside of that bubble, and the personas had nothing to do with that, because the personas are Kay. They're the same person. So what happened to Kay happened to all of them. And, she told Jane, like Kay told Jane, she was like, you have to admit, she was like, just say the words, that it happened to all of us. Like, we were all affected. We were all traumatized. And then when Jane finally said the words, that's when the puzzle piece appeared in front of her, where she put the final piece in. It took her to the trains. It took her back to the underground in the train station, where all the personas were in the train together. And then when all the personas were leaving the underground was destroyed. Kay had said to Jane, she was like, don't worry about the underground. She said that, it was time for it to go. But she was like, I've built a new place for us to exist. So I guess, like, from an internal, from an emotional, from a mental, from a physical standpoint, Kane has basically learned to she basically worked on her trauma. Like, she worked through her trauma, and although she does have the different personas, she still has the multiple personality disorder. She's been able to get to a healthy place where she can create a better existence for those different personas, because now she understands these personas aren't individual people there to protect her. They're all the same person, and she's accepted that they're all one. And Jane's accepted that too, and now they're all one big happy internal mental family. And then that's, then that's how the whole Jane thing ended. And Niles, even then, because like when Niles found out that Jane was from the future, he took out like some memory erasing serum that was supposed to erase his memories, because you're not supposed to know too much about the future. Niles, it was unclear whether or not Niles actually took the serum or not. It's almost like in the end, Niles decided to not take the serum because he wanted to remember everything that happened. Even in the situation with Cliff, when Bootleg Constantine was just like, oh, he's like, we have to erase, he said, because when Cliff started talking about the future, he was just like, oh, I have to erase both of our memories immediately, and Niles was like, you'll do no such thing, and because he didn't want his memory erased. So even with Jane, I feel like he kept that memory, and he wanted to keep, because I guess like it lets him know that he did a good job with her, like in the future when he bumps into her again. So that was pretty decent. And then finally, Victor Stone, he's still stuck in the space-time continuum, and he's sending an SOS throughout to try to reach somebody. He ended up reaching the future, and it was the robot that both him and his boy Derek built together, which was tied into Victor's operating system. So Victor was able to connect to that robot and talk to Derek through the robot. Derek was teaching a class with 3 other kids while Vic and Derek were trying to get him out of the space-time continuum. One of the students, the female student, her name was Joy. She was doing the calculations for the time continuum, and she said she was trying to figure out where the portal was, and she managed to locate to where the portal was. And then Victor was like, yo, who is this kid, and how the hell did she know how to calculate space-time continuums and time streaming? And then that's when Derek told him, he said that she learned from you, they all learned from you. And then that's when Cyborg realized he was talking to the future. So it's either that girl is Victor's daughter from the future, or Victor and Derek basically just grow up to become teachers that teach kids about, like mechanics and number crunching and all the stuff that goes on with being a cyborg. He basically teaches it to these students. But I thought that was his daughter, because Derek did tell him, he was like, she's your future. So I don't know if he meant as a teacher or if he meant it some other way, because he had sex with Ronnie in season 2. So we already know that Vic's junk works. So it could go either way, but we'll see what happens. And then at that moment when Vic was just like, but how do we know the calculations are correct? That's when future Vic walked in, and he was just like, yeah, he's like, I checked their math and their math holds up, so you'll be fine. So then Vic pressed the button to pull the members of the Doom Patrol out of the portals, out of the time, and back into his space-time bubble thingy. And then when they all got back, they were just like, shit, we had 3 chances to get immortality and we failed. And they were all just like, now that we failed, what do we do? And then Victor was just like, fuck it. He said, we got to go back. We got to save Rita. We got to do what we can. Jane actually gave the rah-rah speech, and she was just like, we're heroes. This is what we do. And then Cliff was like, how the fuck are you giving the rah-rah speech? And then Cliff was just like, screw it. He said, if we go out swinging and we take Immortus and those butts with us, he was like, it'll be worth it. So now they're going to go back to the present, because Vic got the coordinates. They're going to go back to the present. They're going to fight the zombie butts. They're going to fight Immortus. It's very weird that the zombie butts and Immortus are both 2 problems that they have, 2 villains that they have, and neither Immortus nor the Butts know that each other exists. I thought that was weird. But they're on their way back to the present to go kick some zombie ass in more ways than one. That was how the episode ended, and thank you for tuning in. So this was good, and I was sad to find out that Rita wasn't even in the damn episode, but I was sad to find out that the next episode is going to be the last episode. But I am looking forward to see how everything wraps up, how all the characters wrap up, because Dorothy's still going to be there, the other girl, Casey, she's going to be there. So it's going to be this whole big thing. But share your questions, comments, and or concerns down below, and let's continue to talk about it. So what do you think about this particular episode of Doom Patrol? What are your thoughts for the series finale? What do you think is going to happen in the series finale? Share your questions down below in the YouTube comment section, and let's continue to talk about it. Check me out on YouTube, check me out on Twitter, check me out on Instagram, always where you can leave your questions, comments, and concerns. Because like I said, I got a lot of stuff coming up on the channel because Loki's on the channel. Check out my Justice League War World review, which is also on the channel as well. And then I said we got some cool stuff coming. Like the Echo trailer came out, so we're gonna do Echo when Echo comes out as we wait for the Marvels, which comes out next week, I believe, for all you Marvel fans. So that was it, guys. So until next time, for the final episode of the Doom Patrol, take care. Don't fall in any portals, because we're out this